on, wrap up and talk about Southampton, Pete, because we know Ben Brereton Diaz has just signed from Villarreal. What do you make of that move for him?
Yeah, I think it's a good deal for everybody involved. I think Brereton Diaz has been keen to return to the Premier League. Obviously, the move to Villarreal hasn't worked out like he had hoped. Probably wasn't playing a lot of minutes there, so he ended up going on loan to Sheffield United last season. And I thought he was one of the shining lights for the Blades last year, despite the relegation from the Premier League. He came in January and he got 6 goals and 1 assist in 16 games. So that's a decent record in a team down the wrong end of the table. So he did himself no harm at all in that loan move. And I think that's probably sparked the interest from Southampton, who have seen him come in and do that job for Sheffield United. He's a versatile player. He can play wide left or he could play down the middle as well. So he obviously adds extra attacking options to Russell Martin's side for the Premier League, and he's got Premier League experience as well. So for £7 million, I think it's a real smart piece of business by Southampton, and I'm sure Brereton Diaz will be hungry to prove again that he can cut it in the Premier League, and he's got a 4-year deal at St Mary's as well, and I think he'll be getting plenty of game time there. And as I said, I think it's a deal that works for everybody. Brereton Diaz is back in the Premier League, and Southampton get a good player for a reasonable fee as well.
I think he's cheap. I think they've done a real good bit of business there. I mean, you look at his record at Blackburn, you look at his goals to games ratio at Blackburn. I think he got it wrong by going to Villarreal. I really do. I think it was the wrong move at the wrong time. Listen, you understand why the player would want to go try to test himself in a different league. Didn't really work for him. Didn't play very, very few starts while he was out in Spain. A lot of his appearances, what he had, they were minimal. They were off the bench. Didn't have an impact, and then he had to find a way back to this country, and he did with Sheffield United last season. And like Pete said there, scored 6 goals in a team that struggled and got relegated and didn't score a lot of goals all season. So I think for Southampton, I think it's a real shrewd piece of business, because they've picked up a player who only, 2 seasons ago was scoring 30 plus goals a season for Blackburn Rovers. Granted, it was in the Championship. I think he can do it in the Premier League. I think that he could be a real surprise signing this season. I think it's a shrewd bit of business.
Paul, how many goals then combined do you think him and Armstrong could get next season if they are successful up front as a duo together?
Yeah, well, that depends if he's going to play him as a 2, doesn't it? I think as a 2. Listen, you look at the Premier League now, and you look at it's getting tougher and tougher. And the 3 that have come up again are going to be the favourites to go down. Leicester potentially starting on a points difference if the ruling comes through. We know that they've been found guilty of the PSR and FFP rules, haven't they? So they're potentially going to get hit with points deductions. The other 2 that have come up are going to struggle as well. How many can they score together? I'd be a lot more confident with scoring a bagful if they're in the Championship. I think they'd be a real threat together. But Brereton Diaz can play out on the wide as well. So it depends what Russell Martin wants to do, whether he plays a lone striker and Brereton Diaz on the left-hand side, coming in a little bit the way that Son does for Tottenham. I suspect maybe that might be some of his role. Southampton are not going to go gun-ho. They're not going to go and attack teams. They're going to leave themselves wide open at the back. So I'd be surprised if he went with 2 strikers from the start of the season. I think he probably will do in some games, but I think maybe at the start you'll see Diaz playing off the left-hand side.
And in terms of other potential signings, Pete, we know there's been some talk about Matt O'Reilly from Celtic potentially. Have the club lodged another bid for the Celtic star?
Yeah, there is interest there from Southampton. And Matt O'Reilly, I think he would be a real marquee signing for Southampton if they could bring him down from Scotland. We saw how good he was for Celtic up there last season. He's a quality player. He can score goals, create goals, and I think he's only going to get better and better as well. They've had a miserly bid of around £12 million rejected. There's been talk now that Southampton could offer the Northern Ireland international Shea Charles in part exchange plus money for Matt O'Reilly. Remains to be seen if Celtic would be willing to do that. I think Celtic do have an interest in Charles, but they probably don't want to include him in any deal for O'Reilly. I think they would prefer straight cash for that one. If Celtic are to sell Matt O'Reilly this summer, it's going to take 25 million, I think. I don't know if Southampton can get to that fee, but there's a lot of interest in O'Reilly. Atalanta are also interested in him, and there's other clubs from the Premier League who are keeping tabs on the situation as well. But yeah, if Southampton were to get him, it would be a really successful transfer window for them, because I think, as we spoke there, I think Brereton Diaz is a real smart deal. They brought back Harwood Bellis on a permanent deal. They brought back Flynn Downs in a permanent deal, and they've made a couple of other signings. Charlie Taylor, Adam Lallana back to his former club as well. They had Premier League experience, and then they've got a couple of young defenders in Nathan Wood and Ronnie Edwards, and the Japanese fullback Sugawara. So to be fair to Southampton, they have been busy in this transfer market to try and give them the best chance to stay up next season.
Paul, picking up on that, if they are to sign Matt O'Reilly, do you think of the 3 teams that have come up, they'd probably be favourites to stay up potentially?
You're probably going to be the best equipped, aren't they? They're talking about the players there that Pete said that they've recruited. They've recruited wisely, I think. I think they had a decent squad to start with. It's going to be a struggle. Listen, it's going to be a struggle for them, as it will be the other two clubs that have come up. I don't have them as, out of the three of them, they could be the best equipped. Yeah, that's the argument. But if I was putting money on it, I'd put the three that came up to go down again, in all honesty.
In terms of an exit, Pete, one name that's been mentioned has been Carl Walker-Peters, talking about that West Ham link. If Aaron Wan-Bissaka is to move, are we now expecting Walker-Peters to stay at the club, or is there interest elsewhere from other teams?
Yeah, there was interest from West Ham, and Walker-Peters just didn't get anywhere, I don't think, in that respect. So as things stand right now, you'd probably imagine Walker-Peters will start the season at Southampton, which will be a bonus for Russell Martin. I'm sure there will be other clubs looking at the former Tottenham man as well. There was even talk that Spurs could be interested, but I don't think that's going to be on the agenda. But yeah, I think he's a quality player. Walker-Peters did very well in the Championship last year. He's a steady Eddie. He's your 7 out of 10 every week, I think, for me. And I think with his previous Premier League experience, it'd be wise of Southampton to try and keep hold of him this season. If they are to sort of have a strong backline and have any chance of staying up, they need to keep hold of their best players. And for me, Walker-Peters is definitely in that bracket.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.